The first time Emma heard the sound, she thought it was her own breath. A slow, ragged inhale that seemed to echo a fraction of a second after she exhaled. But when she held her lungs still, the sound persisted. Quiet, deliberate, and coming from somewhere behind her in the darkened hallway. The house wasn't supposed to be frightening. It was a modest rental, tucked along the edge of a quiet town, surrounded by whispering trees and the soft hum of insects at night. To Emma and her younger brother Caleb, it was supposed to be a fresh start. Their father had died the previous winter, and their mother thought a change of scenery would soften the weight pressing on all of them. But the house seemed to breathe with them. Emma noticed it first. The subtle way shadows shifted where no light moved, the hush of something brushing against the floor when she and Caleb sat perfectly still. Their mother dismissed it as grief playing tricks on tired minds. "Old houses creak," she would say with a forced smile, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of doubt. Still, Emma couldn't shake the sensation that something waited just beyond her sight. The nights were the worst. Caleb, only 12, began complaining of strange dreams, figures standing over his bed, whispering words he couldn't remember once morning came. He swore that sometimes when he woke, his room smelled faintly of earth, damp and raw, as if the forest had somehow crept inside. Emma, older and protective, tried to reassure him. But in her own room, she had begun waking at odd hours, her skin prickling with the undeniable awareness that she wasn't alone. Once, as she reached for her lamp, her eyes caught a darker shape within the dark. A shadow stretched across her ceiling, swelling and receding as though it were breathing. By day, the house wore its mask of normalcy. Sunlight spilled through the windows, dust floating lazily in the glow. Their mother busied herself with work, refusing to acknowledge the unease that tightened the air. But the quiet between conversations grew heavier, as if all three of them were listening, waiting for something they couldn't name. One evening, as the September wind rattled the branches outside, Emma decided she needed proof. She left her phone recording on the nightstand before she slept, its dim red light a small comfort in the dark. When she woke the next morning, she scrolled through hours of silence, until she froze. At 3:17 a.m., the recording captured a faint but distinct sound. 2 steady breaths. Hers, and another, slower one, dragging in and out, like something ancient struggling to remember how to breathe. The sound grew louder, closer, until it ended with a whisper so faint she couldn't be sure if it was real. Her name. Emma. She stared at the phone, her stomach turning cold, when a soft knock echoed from her bedroom door. And she realized Caleb was still asleep down the hall. Emma didn't tell her mother about the recording. She didn't tell Caleb either. Some part of her knew they wouldn't believe her, or worse, they would. Instead, she tucked the phone under her pillow, as if hiding it could erase what she had heard. Their mother, Claire, was already stretched thin. Once a nurse who thrived in the chaos of emergency rooms, she now moved through the house with quiet precision, as though afraid of making noise. She threw herself into night shifts at the local clinic, leaving Emma to watch over Caleb. To Claire, the move had been about survival. New town, new job, fewer reminders of the husband who had withered from illness while she tried and failed to save him. But Emma knew her mother's silence wasn't just grief, it was fear. Fear of losing control, of being seen as fragile. Fear of passing her own quiet paranoia to her children. Caleb carried his fears differently. He was a boy who laughed too loudly at his own jokes, desperate to fill the space with sound. But Emma could see the cracks, the dark circles beneath his eyes, the way he lingered in her doorway at night pretending he needed something. His nightmares were growing worse. He had started drawing them in his sketchbook. Figures made of crooked lines, heads bent at impossible angles, their mouths open as though gasping for air. "They stand in the corners," he whispered once, showing her a page. "But they don't move unless I look away." Emma told him they were just dreams, but the drawings looked too much like what she had seen in her own room. The shadow that had swelled and shrunk like a pair of lungs. The house itself seemed eager to confirm their fears. Whispers carried through the vents, unintelligible yet oddly rhythmic, like someone murmuring prayers underground. Lights flickered when no storm stirred the sky. Once, Emma caught sight of a reflection in the hallway mirror that lingered a fraction too long, her own face staring back at her, but with lips parted, inhaling when she had not. She tried to rationalize it. Old wiring, sleep deprivation, grief manifesting as hallucination. The logical explanations were comforting, if fragile. But each night as the air grew heavy and the walls seemed to pulse with sound, logic felt further away. Caleb began insisting that they shouldn't sleep with the windows closed. "It's worse when there's no air," he said. "Like they're waiting for us to stop breathing." Emma laughed it off, but unease prickled down her spine. Who were they? The questions multiplied, pressing against her like the weight of the house itself. Were the shadows alive, or just projections of her family's grief? Was she watching the house, or was it watching her? That night, lying awake, Emma heard it again. Breathing that wasn't hers, filling the silence between heartbeats. Only this time it came from beneath her bed. Emma tried to bury the fear beneath routine, school, chores, keeping Caleb distracted. But shadows don't care for schedules, and the house made sure she remembered. When her classmate Lily came over one afternoon, Emma finally confessed. "Something's wrong here," she said in a hushed tone, careful that Caleb didn't overhear. Lily scoffed, tossing her backpack on the couch. "You've been watching too many horror movies. Old houses creak, pipes moan, you know that." She grinned, but the look didn't reach her eyes. The longer she stayed, the more restless she became, her gaze darting to corners as if expecting something to be there. Before leaving, she muttered, "You should ask around. People don't rent places like this without a reason." The words lodged in Emma's mind like a splinter. That evening, she found the courage to ask their neighbor, Mrs. Alder, an elderly woman with a sharp gaze softened by years of living alone. "You're in the Marshall house," Mrs. Alder said, her voice low, as though speaking too loudly might summon something. Family lived there in the 70s. Strange folk. They kept the curtains drawn. People whispered about noises, like the house was alive. One night the father vanished, never found. The rest moved out before winter. Emma forced a smile, pretending she wasn't shaken. But back home, the walls seemed closer than ever, pressing in with every breath. That night, the disturbances grew bolder. Doors slammed when no wind stirred. A picture frame fell from the wall, the glass shattering inches from Caleb's feet. In the morning, Emma found words scrawled on the condensation of her bathroom mirror. "Keep still." She scrubbed it away before Caleb could see, but her brother already knew. His sketches had changed. The once crooked figures were sharper now, more detailed, dark shapes with hollow chests, as though their bodies were carved from shadows themselves. One page showed something worse, a figure hunched beneath a bed, its face obscured, but its lungs bulging like balloons, inflating and deflating with stolen air. "Did you write this?" Emma asked, showing him the bathroom message. He shook his head. "They did." His voice cracked. "They're learning our names." Paranoia seeped into their lives like damp rot. Emma caught her mother staring at nothing, lips parted as though listening to something only she could hear. Claire denied it, snapping when Emma pressed. "I'm tired, that's all. Don't start making things up." But the strain showed. Every creak in the house made them flinch. Every whisper in the vents was another reminder that their breaths were not their own. Then, one night, Emma found Caleb's sketchbook lying open on the kitchen table. She flipped through the pages, heart pounding. The latest drawing froze her blood. It wasn't a shadow this time. It was a face. Hers. Eyes wide, mouth open, chest caving inward as though the very air had been pulled out of her. Beneath it, scrawled in jagged letters that weren't Caleb's handwriting, "You're next." The house no longer waited for nightfall. By day, doors slammed with enough force to rattle the windows. Footsteps echoed across empty halls. Once, while Emma stood at the sink, she heard her own voice call Caleb's name from upstairs, though she hadn't spoken a word. When Caleb went to check, he swore something whispered back. Claire tried to hold the family together, but her calm was cracking. She had begun keeping the lights on at all hours, muttering that shadows weren't safe. Emma caught her mother staring at the hallway mirror, lips trembling as though she were silently begging it not to move. No one slept properly anymore. Caleb had started dragging his blanket into Emma's room at night, refusing to be alone. His nightmares left him drenched in sweat, gasping for breath as if something were pressing against his chest. Emma couldn't deny it any longer. The house was alive, and it wanted them. The suffocation grew unbearable. At dinner one evening, the family ate in silence, forks scraping against plates. Then, all at once, the air grew icy. A sound rose through the vents, breathing slow and heavy, so loud it drowned out their own. The lights flickered. The overhead bulb shattered. Claire screamed as the entire table lurched, plates flying, silverware clattering to the floor. Caleb clung to Emma, sobbing, while Claire stumbled back, covering her mouth as though afraid to inhale. That night, Emma finally broke. "We can't stay here. Something is wrong with this place. It doesn't want us." Claire's face was pale, her voice shaking. "And go where? We can't just keep running." Caleb, his small voice trembling, whispered, "If we leave, they'll follow. They said so." Emma's skin went cold. "Who said that?" "The ones in the dark." He wouldn't meet her eyes. The choice pressed in on them: abandon the house or confront whatever waited in its shadows. Neither felt safe. The haunting only escalated. Emma's phone filled with recordings she hadn't made, hours of wheezing breaths, of whispers repeating their names. Caleb's drawings showed the shadows stretching longer, closer, until one page displayed their family huddled at the dinner table, surrounded by figures without faces. On the 7th night, Emma awoke to silence so deep it roared in her ears. Caleb was curled on the floor beside her bed. Claire's room was empty. The hallway stretched ahead, darker than usual, as though light itself had been drained from it. Emma gripped Caleb's hand and stepped forward. From the far end came the sound of dragging footsteps. "Mom?" she whispered. The steps stopped. Then, from the darkness, her mother's voice answered. Low, broken, not quite human. "Emma, don't breathe." Something shifted in the shadows behind the voice, tall and swaying, its chest rising and falling with a rhythm too slow, too deliberate to belong to anything alive. And then, in the silence that followed, Emma realized she and Caleb were holding their breath, yet the sound of breathing still filled the hall. Emma always believed the terror belonged to the house, the shifting shadows, the voices in the vents, the suffocating air. But when the truth came, it wasn't in the creak of floorboards or a whisper in the night. It came from her mother's mouth. "You think this place is haunted?" Claire said, her voice sharp with a strange, fevered calm. "But it isn't the house. It's us." The words hung heavy in the living room. Emma shook her head. "No. You're just tired. You're not thinking straight." Claire's gaze snapped toward her, desperate and unblinking. "I watched it happen to your father. He thought it was the house too. But it was already inside him, feeding on him. Every cough, every gasp. He wasn't sick, he was being hollowed out." Caleb's voice cracked. "That's not true." Claire leaned closer, her chest rising and falling in that unnatural rhythm Emma had heard in the recordings. "You've felt it, haven't you? The air pulling against your lungs at night. The shadows keeping time with your breath. Tell me you haven't felt it." Emma's throat tightened. She wanted to scream denial, but the truth clawed its way up from the pit of her stomach. She had felt it. "No," Emma whispered, but it sounded weak, unconvincing. Caleb tore his hand away, trembling. "You're lying. You're trying to scare us." Claire's face twisted, a flash of anguish breaking through. "I've tried to protect you from it, but you can't hide from what you are." Her shadow stretched long across the floor, swelling and collapsing like a living lung. And as Emma stared, her own shadow began to mimic the same motion. She stumbled back, horrified. No, it's not possible." Caleb's eyes widened, darting between them. "Emma." His voice was barely a whisper. "It's happening to you, too." Emma felt panic claw her chest, her own breath uneven and alien. Was it hers, or was it theirs? The house groaned, dust trembling loose from the ceiling. The air vents hissed with layered voices repeating her name. The walls seemed to exhale, pressing the family closer together in suffocating darkness. Claire's voice broke through the noise, both pleading and monstrous. "Don't you see? We don't live in this house. We are the house. The shadows don't haunt us. They grow through us. Emma shook her head violently, tears spilling hot down her cheeks. Stop it. You're not my mother anymore. Claire's lips curled into something between a smile and a sob. And soon, you won't be Emma anymore. For a heartbeat, the room fell silent, except for one sound. Breathing. Not hers, not Caleb's, not even Claire's. She spun, but there was nothing there, only shadow. And in that moment, she knew. There was no way out. The walls of the house pulsed like veins. Every surface seemed alive, inhaling, exhaling, pulling the family into its rhythm. Emma clutched Caleb to her chest, her own lungs aching as though the air belonged to something else. Fight it, she screamed, though her own voice wavered. Don't let it in! Claire stood at the center of the living room, arms outstretched, her face a mask of ecstasy and torment. The shadows clung to her body like a second skin, moving in time with every labored breath. It's too late, she rasped. We're part of it now. The lights flickered violently. Pictures tumbled from the walls, shattering on the floor. The mirror above the fireplace rippled as though filled with water, its reflection no longer theirs, but a black void expanding, contracting, breathing. From the vents, voices whispered in overlapping tones. Emma, Caleb, breathe with us. Caleb whimpered, covering his ears, but Emma held him tighter. You're not taking him! The house groaned in response, and suddenly the floor split down the middle with a deafening crack. From the gap surged black vapor, coiling and writhing, dragging the air out of the room. Emma gasped, choking as her vision blurred. She staggered, clutching Caleb's hand, fighting to keep him conscious. Then the shadows lunged. They didn't move like smoke, but like living muscle, wrapping around Claire first, pulling her upward. She screamed, not in fear but in surrender, as the shadows entered her mouth, her chest rising unnaturally high before collapsing with a sound like breaking bones. Emma shrieked, dragging Caleb back, but the shadows reached for them next. A tendril brushed Emma's wrist, and a flood of images seared her mind. Her father gasping for breath in this same room, her mother whispering prayers into the dark, Caleb sketching figures that already lived inside them. It wasn't just the house. It had always been in their blood. Emma's rage flared through the terror. You can have me, she spat into the darkness. But not him! The shadows paused as though listening. Then the mirror rippled again, and her reflection stepped forward, darkened, hollow-eyed, lungs expanding grotesquely. It raised a hand, mirroring hers, but where Emma clutched Caleb, the reflection dragged him down into the void. No! Emma screamed, slamming her fist against the glass. It cracked, spiderwebbing across the surface. The reflection fractured but did not vanish. It multiplied, dozens of shadow Emmas pressing against the glass, mouths opening in unison to exhale a single, suffocating breath. Caleb collapsed, gasping, his small chest rising in sync with the shadows. Emma dropped to her knees, clutching him, desperate to keep him tethered. Behind her, Claire's voice returned, warped and hollow. Don't fight it, this is who we are. The sooner you breathe with them, the sooner it stops hurting. Emma looked at Caleb, his eyes wide, pupils dilating, the sound of his breath no longer his own. And for the first time, Emma felt her lungs give way, not stolen, but willingly surrendered. The shadows inhaled, and the house went silent. For a heartbeat, Emma thought it was over. Then, from deep within the mirror's cracks, came a sound more chilling than silence. Her own voice whispering, "We're still inside." When Emma opened her eyes, the house was silent. Not the heavy, suffocating silence that had haunted them for weeks, but the fragile kind that follows a storm. The air felt lighter, still trembling with the memory of violence, but free of the constant inhaling and exhaling. Caleb lay beside her, pale but alive. His chest rose and fell in its own rhythm again. For the first time in days, Emma could tell it was his. Claire, though, was gone. The shadows that had swallowed her left only absence, as if she had been erased rather than taken. Emma searched the ruined rooms, calling her name, but there was nothing. No body, no trace, just the faint smell of damp earth lingering in the air. By dawn, Emma led Caleb out of the house. They didn't pack, didn't look back. The house loomed behind them like a lung collapsing, its windows dim and hollow. Neighbors watched as they staggered barefoot into the street, but no one asked questions. Perhaps they already knew. In the weeks that followed, Emma replayed every detail, trying to understand. The curse wasn't bound to the walls. It had lived inside them, hidden in her family's breath for years. Her father's illness, her mother's silence, the dreams Caleb had carried. The house hadn't created their torment. It had revealed it. And though the house was behind them, the scars remained. Caleb barely spoke. He kept his sketchbook closed, refusing to draw. At night, Emma would hear him wake with a start, clutching his chest, whispering, "It's still breathing." Emma, too, felt the shadows lingering. In crowded rooms, she would lose track of her own rhythm, panic rising as she wondered if her lungs truly belonged to her. Sometimes in the bathroom mirror, she swore she saw her reflection pause a heartbeat too long before inhaling. The moral revealed itself in fragments, like broken glass. Secrets fester, grief consumes, denial invites the dark in. Her mother's lies, however well-intended, had fed the curse. And Emma realized the truth was more frightening than any ghost. Monsters don't always wait in haunted houses. Sometimes they wait inside the people you love most. Caleb asked her once, his voice trembling. "Do you think it's gone?" Emma pulled him close, though she couldn't bring herself to answer. She wanted to tell him yes, to promise safety. But in her chest, she felt the faintest hitch in her breathing, like the echo of another rhythm pressing against her lungs. That night, as she lay awake listening to Caleb's steady breaths beside her, the silence of their new apartment shifted. In the corner of the room, the shadows stirred. They didn't move, they didn't whisper, they only breathed.